Welcome to the Cookies and Coffee Podcast. My name is Cale Owen.
And my name is Maggie Owen. I am the VP of Operations and Cale is the CEO. And together we run 2 8-figure businesses and we are in the middle of building a startup.
And this podcast is to document our journey as high-level executives, as parents, and as husband and wife, so that we can share what's working for us, what we found that doesn't work, lessons, tips, and tricks, so that if you are married and working together or want to do that, you can learn from what has worked for us and for many other people so that you can have an incredible marriage, an incredible business, and an incredible life. How to support your spouse in business.
Yeah. Well, I think there's like a couple of different.
Well, real quick, how did it come up? Like, how did this question come up?
Yeah. So we just had a big event, GymCon 2023, which was awesome. And somebody came up to me and asked me, how did I get started being in business with you? And was I all in from the beginning? Or was it something that over time we decided to like get in the business together? And they were asking because they wanted their spouse to get into business with them. And so they were asking, how did Cale go about getting you to get into business with him? How to
strong arm you into
it. Basically how to force them into business with you, which I thought was really interesting because, there's a lot to unpack there because I don't think you should force your spouse to do anything with you. You shouldn't, if they don't want to be in the business with you, you shouldn't force them to be in the business with you. But being married and either operating a business at a high level or owning the business and being an entrepreneur, if your spouse isn't in the business with you, they still have to be a partner from a relationship standpoint with the business. Because if your home life is not set and you're feeling, like a disconnect between how your spouse is supporting you and what you're doing within the business, you're never going to feel fulfilled. There's always going to be that like pull where it's like, you should be at home because your spouse wants you to be at home or doing something different, but like you want to go focus on the business. And so I think there's 2 different dynamics. Like you can have the cheerleader type of relationship where it's like your spouse is all in supporting you in whatever you're doing, or the fullback where it's like you're in it together. I think either is fine. We just happen to have the fullback relationship where we're all in it together.
Who's the fullback?
Can we both be fullbacks?
I'll be the fullback.
Yeah. You're definitely the leader of it. And I definitely support you in the visionary aspect of it.
In certain aspects of life. But other aspects, you're very much the leader in it.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that is it kind of comes down to our, we talk about sometimes our biological like DNA of like what we're wired to do, where it's like, society nowadays thinks that the woman should be fiercely independent and, these relationships, you should set up your marriage so you're both independent of one another. And it's like you choose to have this relationship with one another, but we're supposed to have a partnership in life and males are wired to protect, provide. And women are supposed to be the caretakers. And so I think naturally our roles just kind of fall where it's like I'm more organized and visionary in the home life. And I still can do that on the business side where it's like you kind of leave that to me and I tell you where I need help in that area versus the business. You're much more the visionary. Here's where we need to go, painting the future picture. And then, I help support in that area.
So how does someone go... Let's take that question of like, how do I get my spouse to get in the business with me? This was a man saying this, and he wanted his spouse, a female, to get in the business with him. And I understand he wants to have this relationship, the marital relationship and the business relationship with his wife, which means that he obviously loves his wife. He truly wants to spend more time with her. He obviously is optimistic and thinks that she has skill sets that would be at least some sort of value to the business. However.
So interesting. I'll give a little bit more backstory about it. She is the one running her own business. And he totally then wanted to start she's in the online fitness space. And he has the brick and mortar space, and he wanted her to stop the online space and go all in on the brick and mortar totally space, which is super different. And he wanted her to go all in on his business.
Man, I can't remember half of the things that happened at GymCon.
Yeah,
I literally cannot remember this. I'm glad you do. I feel like I blacked out.
Which either way, I still think it's like he wants to be all in with her because obviously she does have skill sets because she built that business. Which I think is interesting because he could also just support her in her journey there. So like I said, I think there was a lot to unpack there, but I think overall it's just how can you support your spouse depending on where they're at in their journey, whether their job, their business, or, just being an entrepreneur.
So how does somebody do that though? So like tactically speaking, because we've talked about the fullback, we've talked about the cheerleader, like how does that conversation go? Because I think that we're big on having direct conversations, clearly communicating. We have found, at least in our conversations with a lot of married couples, and non-married couples that are together and want to be married or have been together for a long time, that they struggle to clearly communicate their needs, their desires, their wants, like all these things inside of the relationship and expectations, which causes a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, a lot of problems, and creates a lot of strife within the relationship that's frankly unneeded. So in this situation with anyone wanting to figure out how to either get their spouse to support them in their business or have a conversation around understanding the expectations around that, what's the best way to go about that?
I'd be curious what your answer is, but I think just asking them, like, do you want to be in business? Like, do you want to go all in on this with me?
Yeah.
Here's what that would look like. I think sometimes it's just what we see sometimes in the industry that we're in, they're like, oh, we really want my spouse or my significant other to come in and like be a partner with me in this. And it's like, okay, well, one, are you worthy of being a partner in that business? Like, do you lead, or can you lead somebody to bring them on board with you? Can you clearly communicate to them? Do you have a vision of what you want? I think sometimes it's just people can get so overwhelmed. Like, well, we just want my spouse to help out with me. Like, just come in and help and like take this over, but they don't clearly communicate how to do that. And like, I know we ran into a lot of issues, not issues, but like that's some of where we butted heads at the early stages of owning the gym together was I was more operationally minded. So the gym wasn't set up for scaling and growing. And you were just like, we'll just figure it out. And I'm like, okay, but you have an idea of how you want it done, but you didn't share that. You just assumed I would know that answer. So I think that was a really long-winded way. Basically, I think you need to ask your spouse if they want to be in it with you, but you also have to clearly communicate. Like me as somebody coming into the business, because you were running the business before I was, once you kind of shared, well, here's where I want to go, here's the vision, can you help me get there? It was much more easy to get on board and a lot more exciting to do that. I don't know, how'd you do it with me? How did you?
You wanted to be in it with me. I think that was really, I don't remember like a specific thing that I tried to do. It was just, I just wanted to make enough money to take care of us. And I knew that you didn't want to be a bartender for the rest of your life. And you wanted to be a part of the business anyway. And you were passionate about fitness already. So there was already a track record there. And you'd already helped at the other gym, had to fire you. Just bad stuff, So that was easy. My take on this is very similar to yours. I think there's a piece of this that, especially for men, or whoever started the business originally. So, and I'm taking this with all the context that there is a business already started, not starting one from scratch, by the way.
Right.
So there's a business, an existing business that's happening. Someone in the marriage has started it and is running it. And I think it's really important to take a step back and truly understand, for whoever is in that position and looking for the support of their spouse to come in and either help in the business or fully support their desire to grow, they have to first really, really get clear on, do they care more about their relationship with their spouse, or do they care more about the business? Which one do they love more? Because you can always make money, but the person that you made vows to and you said that you would love them for better or for worse through sickness and in health, right? That is way more important than anything else. And so that is very hard to do though, because when you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into a business, it can feel sometimes more real than a marriage, and for a lot of people. Right? Because the fight in the business, you can see monetary, when there's a fight in the business and you have to fight to survive and fight to be successful, there's a monetary payoff which is tangible. You don't have that in a marriage, right? And so I think the first step is to truly go into a conversation knowing that you might realize in that conversation that your spouse has zero desire to be a part of it and doesn't want you to be doing it either. And that's where you have to be prepared going in, understanding which one do you want more.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
I do think that's really important. But I think, again, it's, well, one, the key theme here is the communication piece and being open and honest and having that open line of communication to talk through those things. And I think if that is the decision, I think it has to be clear on both sides. So like,
that's what I mean.
If the spouse doesn't, if the other person, so the person who has the person who has the business, and they don't want to change it, and it's like, okay, well, this isn't the best decision, we should change courses altogether. There has to be a look kind of inward and making sure, like, is this a selfish ask, or is it really what's best for the family from there? Because I think sometimes that happens too, where it's like our egos kind of get into it, and we look at it from, well, I want to keep going down this path. And we don't look at internally hard enough to say, actually, that's not the right course of action. That's really selfish for the family as a whole. And so I think knowing if we are going to ask someone to give something up, it's not a selfish ask or selfish reason why. It's going to take just as much work to change courses and pivot than it would be to just like figure out where the deficits are and help support that person to continue to scale and grow.
Yeah, you shouldn't give up. So a good way to put this succinctly would be, if you're going into a conversation with your spouse and your spouse doesn't make logical decisions and truly doesn't have a decent IQ, and I don't mean that in a bad way, just they're not the smartest person when it comes to making decisions. They make poor money decisions. They make poor time decisions. They don't manage their time very well, their attention very well. They spend a lot of money, and they genuinely don't make great decisions. You probably should go into an understanding that any feedback that they give you, probably you'll have to take with a grain of salt, period. And that's why, I mean, you have to be prepared, like going in. But once you have that conversation, I think then it's like, I always like to put it in your shoes first by asking the question of, hey, what do you think about this? Rather than coming in hot and heavy and just being like, it's going to be this way. I need you for this. Instead of being like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? This is where I see the business going. Would you be interested in being a part of that with me, or would you prefer to do something else? Because I'll support you in whatever. I'm just letting you know that the business is going in this direction, and I really am super passionate about it. I'm really excited about where we're going. I think that you would be an incredible asset to the business. But I also understand that our relationship comes first, which is why I'm coming to you first. Because I need to bring someone on, and I need someone to help me with the business. And I would love it to be you. But I also, the first things first, our relationship matters more. And I want to acquiesce to what your desires are.
Yeah. I think it took you a long time to get to that place. Like that probably happened maybe four years ago. So 6 years of being a business, it took like a two-year trial, and not even trial, like learning.
I paid the ignorance tax, so you don't have to.
Because before, I think you would shoulder it all on your own. And I think that, again, that's where the communication piece comes in. Where it's like, I was willing to jump in and help wherever you wanted to go, but I didn't know that that's what you wanted. And so I would get frustrated because you would be working all of these late hours. I had no idea what you were trying to accomplish or where you were trying to go, because I think you wanted to accomplish it on your own to prove that you could do it and provide for our family. But as soon as you started opening up about, okay, well, here's where we're going to go, here's where I could use your help, it just unlocked so much more potential that we could do as a couple than you could do alone.
Strip away the ego aspect of it. Yeah.
And that took a while. I mean, even probably the first 4 to 5 years of our marriage.
For sure. Absolutely. And it's not easy to do at all. Because, you go into it with these beliefs around traditional marriages. For me, like growing up in a traditional marriage, my mom didn't work. My dad was like, no, like you're staying home, you take care of the kids, all this stuff. So for me, I was like, I never was like that. Like, yes, like let's work, like definitely. But for me, it was more so, it was my job to provide. And I didn't want to have you shouldering the burden at first when I was doing this. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to make it work. And then I just made a piece of content on this. A successful trait, I think, for a trait that a lot of successful business owners have that I don't think people talk about enough is that they would rather win more than be right. And for me, I'm not massively successful, but we've seen a decent amount of success compared to where we were. And that is, I just gave that up a long time ago. I'd rather just win. than stick to my ego and be right and do it all on my own. I'd rather just win.
Yep.
And best decision of my life, hands down, because winning with you is way better than winning alone.
Yep.
Way better.
What's the thing? Because we have different skill sets too.
Yeah.
So when you go all in together, whether it's just supporting or you're in the business together, either way, just like having the support of two people on the same journey for the same mission is so much more powerful than one person doing one thing and another person doing something different.
Yep. I think it's important too for spouses because they have this idealistic, I see this a lot, I think we see this a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd be curious your feedback on this, especially men, when I talk to men, because gym owners are roughly 70% owned by men and 30% by women. And so when I see men, they're very optimistic about having their wives coming in because they feel like it's the right thing to do. And they feel like their wife it's a good way for their wife to spend more time with them. So it kind of solves that problem while also still being in the business. The problem with that though, is that if their spouse doesn't truly want to be in the business, but more importantly, doesn't have the skill set nor the ability to grow a skill set to help the business, it's the equivalent of a rich person with a child that's a trust fund baby. Because this person will just come in, this spouse will come in with no skill sets, be handed the keys to the kingdom in a leadership position with no skill set, and they will F everything up. Because then what will happen is they'll come in thinking that they need to do these things, or they won't do certain things and they'll do other things. It will mess up the processes. It won't help the gym actually grow or the business grow. And then what will happen is that the founder, the other spouse, the one that started the business, will have to come in and have a hard conversation. And typically those don't go very well.
Yeah.
Because someone without the right skill sets or the ability to grow is very emotional, not very logical. And then all of a sudden flare-ups happen, and this is where disagreements happen a ton. So there's also a base level of skills that are needed if you're going to ask your spouse to come in and join, which thankfully you have a ton of base level skills, and you acquired so many, and you were very interested in growing, and still to this day, always trying to grow and get better.
Yeah. I think that's why it's so important to know if your spouse actually wants to be in the business with you. Because if they want it and they want to be a part of that, they'll do what it takes to learn the skill set, acquire it, surround themselves with the right people. But if they don't and it's forced, they're never going to level up and meet those expectations. And then there's just going to be friction.
Yep. Agreed. What else?
That's it. That's all I've got on.
Yep. And I think can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Whichever one it is. So the cheerleader, on the sidelines cheering, great job, but not involved, or it's the fullback in there in the trenches, like working with you, whichever way it goes, you have to be 100% in support of that. Don't try to go back and try to pull the person in. I'm a firm believer of never forcing anyone to do anything. You have to allow them, you either have to show them something that's worth doing, your spouse, to attract them into it, or you just have to sit there and you just have to support their decision fully and understand and not try to force them back into changing their mind.
Yeah.
Once that decision is made, support them 100% and be thankful for that, because they could just say no altogether.
Yep. I think just adding to that a little bit more too is once the decision has been made, defining what support looks like for each of the partners, right? Like, what does support look like as the cheerleader, and what does support look like as the fullback side, right? Like, what does support look like to one another? And that should be communicated from the other person. So, I would say, here's what I need from you to feel supported in this role, in this position. And then same thing for you, because if you don't communicate it, you're not going to have any idea how to support the other person.
What's an example of that for you, for me to support you?
In our current roles, or back when we own
Let's go current right
gym? I think right now the biggest thing we're focusing on, because we're kind of really, we're building a tech startup company. Mm-hmm. We just promoted 2 high-level leaders into owning the different entities of Gym Launch and Prestige Labs. So we're kind of transitioning into these different, same role, but owning different responsibilities that we didn't have before. We're rising to a different level of leadership. And so support for me now is being more clear on what the vision looks like, how you plan to get to the vision and what that looks like, and being more clear in how you want to get there. So I know how to support you the best. Otherwise, if it's just kind of left up to me to figure it out, it's going to take me a lot longer to get there. What about me? What does support for me look like?
To ask when you're not clear on stuff. So if you're not 100% clear, to ask and I'll explain it right away. To not wait.
Yeah.
Like, speed is king with that stuff. For sure.
And for me, we'll just get deep now onto it. If I have a hard time asking for that sometimes, of like being more clear and direct, because sometimes you seem irritated that you have to explain the vision of like what's in your head. And so it makes me less likely to want to ask you or tell you when I'm not clear on it, because I feel not dumb, like you've never made me feel dumb, but I do almost feel like I feel inferior that I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just sit on it, which is bad on both parts. I should just bring it up to you and tell you.
That's great.
That, yeah.
What's funny, put this in perspective. I think this is, I'm so glad you brought that up. I am irritated, but not at you. I'm irritated at me for not explaining it better the first time, because I hate having to do it again. And I realized, gosh, I did it again. Like, I didn't clearly communicate what needs to happen. And so I will make the commitment to not seem irritated and just simply not be, and take it for what it is.
We think it's okay to have to repeat yourself, because you say this role, it's not CEO, it's CRO, Chief Reminding Officer, right? So it's constantly reminding the team around you. I think sometimes that's where it can get kind of blurry, because being your spouse and also being the VP of operations, if I wasn't your spouse, you would communicate, I think, a little bit more often.
Probably.
About where we're trying to go versus just assuming that I've got it. And so I think for you, it's the same thing. It's like, you can coach someone 100 times, give them the same cue. They go to a different gym. They see another coach while they're traveling. Like, we used to see this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I just at this great gym and they told me this one cue. And now I'm like, hit this new PR. And you're like, I've been trying to tell you how to do this for the last year. But sometimes it's just saying it a different way or with a different tone or whatever can kind of unlock a different understanding of it. And having different leaders of all different backgrounds and skill sets, sometimes it's just continuing to repeat the same thing. And maybe you say it a little differently than you did the last time. And then there's understanding. Or maybe there's not, and then you're just super frustrated. I don't know. Then we got to fire everybody and get a new team. No, I'm just kidding.
No, never. Yeah, it's very interesting. What I like about all of this, though, even though when we do get frustrated, it always comes back to we're on the same team.
Yeah.
No matter what, which helps a ton. It's always a good reminder every day.
Yeah. Going back to what is right versus who is right.
Yep. And what is right in life, if we take a step back, what is right is our relationship first.
Yeah.
That is what is right. Because if we're right, then everything else will fall into place. And it won't matter. I love you.
I love you too.
All right, guys. Good?
Yeah.
Sweet.
That's good.
If you guys got any value from this, again, we appreciate it. Again, we're not doing it for the likes, for the followers, subscribers, or anything. However, we're going to work to consistently put out and document our relationship at a high level. I didn't touch on this in the beginning, but I'm the CEO of Gains, which has the 3 companies we talked about before. And Maggie is the VP of operations, essentially COO of those 3 companies. And our goal is to grow it into a multi-$100 million portfolio with the private equity firm that purchased us. And we're basically documenting us being married and working at a high level together with kids and doing all the different things. And
having an epic life.
Having an epic life and how you can have it all. So we hope you found value from this. Again, if you don't, I'm going to be straight to the point. I don't care. I'm doing this for us long term. But if you did find value and you think that it's worth something, worth sharing, my only request and the only payment, the only cost of listening to this is if you did find value and you know someone would find value from it, share it. That's it. So you get the word out. Our goal is to make being hardworking, loving, married couples cool again. Like, that's kind of our goal, is to make this really cool.
Yeah.
So family oriented, married couples who can work together
and actually love each other.
Truly love each other.
Yeah.
Make it cool again. Awesome. Appreciate y'all. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.